Start off just by setting the big picture scene, I suppose, with regards to social media and where it's come from and why it's important. So there's been I suppose the first point is that this social media really represents, it's a major structural shift. This isn't sort of a short-term campaign thing that sort of happens to be it's a hot topic right now, but there's a major shift that's been going on as power over the last 100 years has shifted from governments to corporations with post-war and capitalism, now to individuals through the rise of the internet in the last 15 years. And again, another quote from Rupert Murdoch, technology is shifting the power away from the editors, the publishers, the establishment, the media elite, and it's now the people who are in control. So again, this is something that Rupert Murdoch is feeling, it's affecting his media business. So looking at the drivers of change, technology, information and shifting social values are all rapidly changing the sort of business landscape that all of our clients operate in. From a technology point of view, APIs and sort of web standards have made it really easy for different bits of information and data and devices to connect together, and broadband's made it really easy for the population to sort of tap into all of those tools, as had mobile. So really, as we all know, the internet is a very major development in that it's really connecting the world's people, devices and information together, and we've only really scratched the surface so far in terms of knowing what to do with that. There's still a long way to go in terms of connecting more people, devices and information to make sort of smart tools to keep the world kind of evolving and moving. And broadband and mobile uptake are on the rise, and I think somebody fell down a manhole last week in New York because they were on their BlackBerry and and didn't see what was coming. And what's a little bit scary is if you look at this is a chart from Cisco, and if you see the amount of mobile data traffic in 2009, it's forecast to increase 66-fold over the next 4 years, which is quite staggering. So again, this is really just the beginning of change, and it's going to continue to impact businesses, and the change is going to reward the businesses that move fast and cause issues for the businesses that are sort of slow to adapt. So looking at another driver of change, which is information. Information is becoming increasingly decentralised, democratised, and there's shifting attitudes towards content and copyright. And the business environment is changing very quickly. And if we look at this, there's a quote here that I'll unfold from Hal Varian, who's the chief Google economist, and this appeared in McKinsey Quarterly. And he said that back in the early days of the web, every document had at the bottom copyright 1997, do not distribute. And that shifted to now every document has at the bottom copyright 2008, click here to send to your friends. So look, this is a very big shift in terms of attitudes towards content and copyright. And part of what social media is all about is actually getting the content off your website into as many places as possible, so your brand can exist in as many places as possible where people are. In terms of values, there's no question that there's shifting values coming through from Generation Y, and all of this new information that's made the world very transparent has really put, if you look at government, Iranian government, religions, everything is now up for discussion and debate, and not just businesses, but it goes beyond that. And people, have values are shifting towards, people looking for respect and authenticity, transparency, generosity from the businesses that they deal with, and also there's this big theme of sustainability. And Google is a business that has grown in the last 10 years to become the most valuable brand on the planet, and they've done it without paid advertising, which is interesting, and they've done it through these values and putting their customer first, and using word of mouth and using social media to really build their brand and to build advocates for themselves. And their mantra internally is "Don't be evil," and that sort of is probably the extreme case of a company conveying these kind of new values of a new business. Another example, which I talked about before, is Zappos, and here's the CEO of Zappos Twitter feed. He's got 1 million people following him on Twitter, so every time he has a thought or he wants to talk about his business or talk about the fact that they're so customer service oriented, 1 million people will see his message, which is quite amazing. So Zappos was bought last week by Amazon for US $880 million. They sell shoes and handbags. Their business was built out of this belief that at some point in the not too distant future, 30% of all retail commerce in the US will happen online, and that's been what's been driving them over the last 8 years to build their business. The whole idea behind their business is that customer service is a media channel. So every person they employ, everything they do is all around customer service and surprising and delighting their clients. So they actively talk to their customers on Twitter and on Facebook and using these various tools. And their belief is that if they make every single customer engagement a positive one, their customers will sell their brand on their behalf. So that's a good example of a company who are using social media to really build their business. Moving forward, going back to the fact that consumers are in control. Markets have always been about conversations. However, a few years ago, the conversations were limited to a very small circle of people, your friends and your family, and the conversations weren't recorded. And the thing about the internet is now that when somebody has a conversation about a product or a service that they like or didn't like, it's now being recorded almost for eternity online, and complete strangers can read it and find it in Google for a long time to come. So these conversations are now very important, and and they're really influencing consumers' behaviour in terms of what products and companies they buy from. So word of mouth has been supercharged, and again, the consumers are in control. And whether companies like it or not, they have really no choice other than to engage in social media, because it's not really the company that gets to choose, it's their customers. And a good example is Dell. So this is a website called ihatedell.net. Some of you might have seen it. And this is the #1 Dell complaint forum, because apparently there are many of them online. So this site has been set up, being hosted, paid for, run by people who are so dispassionate about Dell that they've decided to spend their time and energy creating this website and maintaining it. And this is the sort of thing which is happening, all across the web with large businesses that have unhappy customers. Dell is actually quite a forward-thinking company with regards to social media. So they're very active, and they've responded by creating this site, which is called IdeaStorm. And what this site allows people to do is to actually list their complaint as a positive suggestion as to what Dell could be doing to improve its products and customer service. And then they encourage other people to join the community and vote on those ideas, and then see those ideas actually be implemented by Dell and make its way into their product mix. So the top idea there is to standardise power cables for all laptops so they're all the same. And so one of Dell's customers suggested that idea, and that idea has been voted for 36,000 times, so it's at the top of the list. And it would be surprising to not see Dell make that change to their product line at some point. So this sort of leads to another idea, which is kind of letting go of your brand and letting your customers and encouraging your customers to sort of take ownership of it and take it in a new direction to make it even more customer focused. So there's a good quote here from Procter & Gamble. Consumers are beginning in a very real sense to own our brands and participate in their creation. We need to begin to learn to let go. So that's a good example there of another sort of shifting attitude within business towards brands. And many of you might have seen this chart before, but this is from a Nielsen report that talks about the percentage of people that have degrees of trust in different forms of advertising. And unsurprisingly, right at the top there, 90% of people say that they have some sense of trust in recommendations from known friends, known people. But consumer opinions posted online, recommendations from completely unknown people on the other side of the planet, people still have 70% trust in that sort of information. And it's far better to have somebody else telling one of your potential customers about how great your product is than it is for you to tell them yourself. So this is where there is massive sort of power for brands that embrace this and work out the right strategy to approach social media. And of course, it's the consumers that are leading this change, and businesses, as they always have been, are sort of following the consumer. So here's a chart put together by Neo that shows that the users are really ahead of the marketers. In the last 5 years, the time spent online by consumers has doubled to 30% of their time, while marketing spend has increased at a slower pace, and you can see that gap kind of widening. Although I think Harold Mitchell said yesterday that he sees spending in online advertising doubling over the next 5 years, so maybe there'll be a bit of a catch-up.